Well, this is why Congress is the single most important branch of our government. Article 1 of the Constitution says only Congress gets to declare war. Thanks to the War Powers Act, a president can start a war, but after 60 days, Congress can refuse to pay for it, period. Presidents can't veto a bill that hasn't been passed. In other words, this is how powerful Congress is. If Congress refuses to pass a supplemental spending bill, that's it for the war in Iran. War's over. Period. President has no say. There's nothing to veto. We didn't pass a supplemental. No bill, no supplemental. The Cost of War Project, for example, estimates that there were roughly 11 supplementals passed between 2003, when George Bush illegally invaded Iraq, and when we left in 2011. There were 11 supplementals to pay for that illegal war. And that came to roughly $1 trillion. Now, a lot of those war supplementals were folded into larger supplementals to cover other emergencies like Hurricane Katrina. But it is estimated that Congress passed 11 bills to fund the war in Iraq, and that came to roughly $1 trillion. So the Democratic Party is just as complicit in the war in Iraq as George W. Bush. Nancy Pelosi voted against the war authorization to go into Iraq. She became Speaker in 2007. And she, as leader of the House, could defund the war. And she could have done that. Instead, she said, I'm against this war, but as long as we have our soldiers in harm's way, we have to continue to fund it. See, I'm going to hold my tongue here and say that's BS. I don't want to curse. That is BS. If you're against the war and you're the Speaker of the House, you say the only money we will approve is whatever it costs to bring the troops home safely. That's what we'll pay for, but we're not paying to keep them there. That's how you end a war, if you really want to end the war, Democrats. That's what Nancy Pelosi could have said. Instead, she claimed, as long as our troops are in harm's way, I can't in good conscience stop funding the war. I mean, some people actually bought that crap. Yeah, our troops are in harm's way. Why would you defund the war? Let me just say it simply so everybody understands. If you're against the war and you're worried about our troops being in harm's way, and you're the Speaker of the House, you say, we're going to fund the Pentagon to bring home the troops out of harm's way. But she didn't want to end the war. And the Democrats love war just as much as the Republicans. Remember, there's going to be a supplemental for this war. All it takes is one chamber to stop the war. You see what's going on. The DHS is shut down. Department of Homeland Security is shut down. A spending bill for the Department of Homeland Security passed in the House, but it died in the Senate, and there's a partial shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. There's nothing the president can do. There's no bill to veto. So Congress has a lot more power. If you can partially defund, if one chamber, the Senate, can partially defund the Department of Homeland Security, one chamber, either the House of Representatives or the Senate, can prevent the war in Iran from being funded? Well, war, and goes back to every war that's ever been fought in the history of uncivilization. War is like a love affair. It starts off with incredible hope, anticipation, excitement, titillation, and promise. We're not all of us, but some are intoxicated by how amazing it all seems to be going. And we're intoxicated and excited because everyone is lying to each other. Like a love affair. Everybody's lying about how great it is. Hegseth and Trump and Netanyahu can't wait to tell us how fantastic the war is going. 1,000 Iranian targets a day. We're hitting 1,000 Iranian targets a day. And I hear that and I think, okay, then why is the Strait of Hormuz closed? Why hasn't the government been toppled? Hegseth, Trump, the Iranian Navy, the Iranian Air Force, Iran's missile defenses, it's all been totally eliminated. We control the air and the sea. Okay, then how come we can't get the oil through the Strait of Hormuz? How come we can't stop Iranian drones from getting past our multi-million-dollar interceptors? We're told every day there's been a 90% drop in Iranian ballistic missiles being launched. We're told American bombers have wiped out 95% of Iran's arsenal of suicide drones. Really? How do you know that? Where'd you get that figure from? And how come the Strait of Hormuz remains closed? How come Trump is asking other countries to bring their military to the region to fight to reopen the Strait of Hormuz if this is going so well? Why are people in the Persian Gulf dying from Iranian drones? Why are refineries getting blown up? We don't know anything. What we do know is Pete Hegseth announced before the weekend began that he is deploying Marines to the Middle East, an expeditionary unit of about 5,000 Marines. We're assured they won't be used as a ground force for any invasion. Well, you're going to need way more than 5,000 Marines. 93 million people live in Iran. Americans don't have the appetite for a ground invasion because Iran will fight back the same way we would if Iran invaded us. What we're witnessing is a symmetrical war. The United States has $4 million interceptors going up against Iran's $20,000 to $50,000 suicide drones. What we're witnessing is Iran playing chess, waging economic warfare against the United States, starting with the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is openly threatening that the cost of oil will more than double unless Trump stops bombing. Iran is saying it's $100 a barrel, $100 a barrel. Wait, keep it up. It's going to go up to $200 a barrel. Clausewitz says war is an extension of policy and politics. Well, it's also economics. At some point, one side runs out of ammunition, money, and political will. Many are suggesting that the Iranians are planning to hang in there just long enough so that Europe and the Persian Gulf states turn on Israel and America because oil has gotten too expensive, food has gotten too expensive, not just because the Strait of Hormuz is permanently closed, but because Iranian drones are targeting refineries inside Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, and Bahrain. Iran is waging psychological warfare. You don't need to sink a tanker or take out a refinery to stop the flow of oil. The mere threat causes that oil to stop flowing. Tankers are refusing to go through the strait. That's psychological warfare. You're stopping those tankers from going through the strait without having to fire any missiles at them, although they have fired missiles at them. Saudi Arabia and other Persian Gulf nations are starting to throttle back oil production. They're only refining enough for domestic use. So you don't need to bomb every refinery to shut them all down. That's what psychological warfare is. You just need to hit a couple of refineries, a couple of tankers, and that's what Iran's plan seems to be.